Check, check.
Okay. You got it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Explorers Club. My name is Bodortsik Bolor. I'm a Mongolian paleontologist and also EC50 fellow of the club and National Geographic Explorer. So I'm really excited to introduce tonight's speaker. So Gregg founded Adventure Scientists in 2011 based on his passion for exploration, scientific discovery, encouraging participation in conservation. National Geographic named Gregg Treinish Adventurer of the Year in 2008 when he and a friend completed almost 8,000-mile trek along the Andes mountain range. And he has participated in multiple ecologically focused expeditions around the world. His fieldwork has included projects focused on wolverine. That one was actually in Mongolia and coldest part of the country. Lynx, bears, owls, sturgeon, and more. Gregg holds biology degree from Montana State University and sociology degree from Colorado University Boulder. In 2015, he was named a DRK Foundation Social Entrepreneur and one of Men's Journal's Most Adventurous Men in 2017. Gregg was named Ashoka Fellow and in 2020 World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. He was named to the Explorers Club 50 and Hatch 100 in 2023. Welcome, Gregg, here. So we're excited to hear about your organization and all your amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to get some help from my little pony here. My daughter gave me that as I was leaving and said it was essential. I hope I can take this off. I was told once never to speak behind a lectern, so I'm not going to. I hope that's all right. So we were 4 days in this scene here, and we were running out of food. It was way deeper snow than we had anticipated, as the winter snowpack was much higher just south of Santiago than we had ever anticipated. My hiking partner, Dea, had fallen into the river at the bottom of this gorge. got swept downstream, lost our hiking shoes, got completely soaked from head to toe. I was walking across the top of the snowpack when it suddenly gave out and I fell into a snow bridge face first into the bottom of a river, bloodied my face, and army crawled out for about a half an hour before I could pop back out onto the top of the snowpack again. We were pretty miserable in this section and pretty done for now more than a year and a half into our expedition in the Andes. And every night, the snow would refreeze and the wind would blow and it would shatter the ice across the top of the snowpack, and it would sound like glass or like a wind chime going across the top, and it was one of the most beautiful sounds that I've ever heard in my life. And it was little moments like that on this journey that always kept us going. But now after 6 days of going across this, we were ready to retreat and ready to get down. But as we started to go down, the lava was so sharp that we immediately started post-holing through and cutting ourselves on these incredibly sharp rocks. So we knew it wasn't safe to keep going down. We had to go back up to the top of the ridge, and now we're down to a can of tuna between us. And we found a ridge made of ash, a huge ash pile. And 16 miles later, made it to the bottom of this river basin. And this is when the real adventure began. So almost immediately, we took off our shirts and wrapped them around our heads because we could no longer see one another just 10 feet apart because this ash storm had blown up so much and it was taking volcanic ash and putting it into every part of our bodies, every part of our faces. We got down on the ground and waited for the storm to pass, and soon it did. And then we made our way to the shores of Lago Invernada. Now, Lago Invernada on Google Earth should have been really easy on both sides around. There was a clear path. We were sure that we would be able to just quickly make it through and be able to cross this lake and get to the other side. It's about 40 miles on the other side down to the nearest town. So we knew we'd be hungry, but we'd be okay. Well, as soon as we got there, the spring snow melt, it became clear, had risen the level of the lake so much that all the trails on the sides of these lakes were completely submerged. So we decided that we were going to crawl and boulder along the side here. We eventually got to a point, you can see the cliff on the upper right-hand side here, where we couldn't go anymore. So we started to rock climb. Within 3 or 4 moves, we realized it was way too hard, far above our skill level. And we retreated back to this site here, decided to waterproof our packs, took off all of our clothes because we only had one set of clothes with us, put them in the packs and jumped in and hoped that we'd be able to get out on the other side. So we pulled ourselves along and made really slow progress. The water was about 34 degrees. And pretty quickly just felt the complete depletion of all of our strength that you feel when you're in 34-degree water. And that night, after a really rough day, we pulled up into this landslide. So every time we would get back in the water, we'd go in for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we would go until we could get out. And there were always these blind corners where we weren't sure we'd be able to get out. I told you we had a half a can of tuna 2 days before. That was gone now. And we're sitting here. We'd make tea from the lake water, warm up, get in our sleeping bags, stay there for about 2 hours and jump back in. And 36 hours later, we finally made it to the other side. But as I laid here this night, looking out at, again, one of the most beautiful sights, wondering, what the hell am I doing here? Why have I put myself in this situation? And what is this all about? I thought back to my childhood of always going against the grain and always thinking about how I can just do it my way. And unfortunately, my way got me into a shitty situation at this time. Yeah. We eventually did, obviously, make it to the other side. Before we made it that 40 miles down, a man on horseback came and found us, and then sped off and came back with 2 meals for us and fed us on the side of the trail, which probably saved our lives. We were really, really struggling at this point. Throughout this journey, we had incredible opportunities to visit with people throughout the Andes Mountains. So many people welcomed us into their homes. They treated us like family. They told us that if we took their baby's hair, that we would be safe and that the baby would be safe as a result. We were the first people in villages that had never seen outsiders before, let alone gringos, let alone 6-foot-tall people with packs like ours and colors like ours. We made true friends throughout the Andes, and it was one of the most special parts of it. But we also faced a lot of struggle on this journey. I was personally diagnosed with roundworms, flatworms, pinworms. I had Giardia 3 separate times, dysentery twice, typhoid fever. I even had a worm bore into my heel and lay about 1,000 eggs. So I gave birth to about 1,000 eggs. We faced landslides and avalanches, rock slides. It was really an endless struggle throughout the entire range. This is in the Rio Monflas, which had flooded a couple years before. It wasn't on maps that it had flooded, and when we got down there into this 4,000-foot deep canyon, this was the way through. And we immediately realized that this wasn't going to work. One of these branches flung back and hit my hiking partner in the eye and tore the lens of her eye, so she couldn't see. It was another brutal day on this journey. That struggle was constant. Oh, that's a funny, sometimes overly dramatic. One more. I keep hitting it too soon. There it is. This is at the southern end of the continent. 4 days at the very southern extent of the continent, bushwhacking through these turba, or peat bog. And again, just pushing ourselves and learning a lot about what we're capable of as individuals and what people are capable of. But a journey that had stayed with me always. We saw incredibly beautiful sights along this, but I want to bring you to the very last day of the trip. I wish I could show you a lot more of it, but I have a lot more I want to talk about. So this is the last day of the trip, quick video from walking along the very southern extent of Tierra del Fuego. So our last day, we left from a night spent with the gaucho, and here we are, starting to walk towards Cabo San Pio. I don't think that it's sunk in yet. It's just an amazing thing to be walking towards one thing, towards one single point for 2 years, for 22 months, and here I am. Here we are in our last day. If you include the planning, it's been 3 years getting to this point. Yeah, we have less than 1 mile to go.
You ready, Greg?
I don't know. Less than 1 mile. How's it feel?
I don't know.
Half mile.
Here comes the sun, and I say it's alright.
Yeah!
No,
That's it!
it's alright.
That's the lighthouse at the southernmost extent of Tierra del Fuego. I got to show my dad that 10 years to the day as we went to Antarctica together and floated right past it. Really cool. The beauty on this trip was so inspiring. These are just a few of my photos from the trip. And I developed a deep, deep passion for traveling this way, for going on foot and learning that all these places are connected and that I can leave from here in New York and I can walk south and I will eventually end up in these same places. Following the rivers and following the natural pathways that nature has created and carved out, it's the only real natural human pace to walk. And the people we met along the way, the journey that we had wouldn't have been possible without going on foot, because it just transformed how we saw this landscape. But it wasn't the landscapes as much as the wildlife that really captivated me. It was on this journey that I just fell in love with the ecology, but also with the wildlife, and wanted to understand how they lived in these places, from penguins in the southern extent to the Amazon, where we got to go and see things like the sloth. Some of these videos are shot on very old cameras, so you'll have to forgive the graininess, but there you go.
Crikey, we've just encountered here deep in the Amazon basin one of the rare boa. Crikey, what a fine meat. Look at him, isn't he beautiful? Oh.
So I developed a deep passion for wildlife and wanted to really understand them more. So I moved to Montana, got a degree in wildlife ecology, and immediately found a job tracking grizzly bears in the summers and lynx and wolverines in the winters. And I was able to start combining my passion for the outdoors and exploration and adventure with science and making a real difference while I was out there. I was able to do this in a way that combined this on expedition style as well, and had the opportunity to do some amazing things all around the world. And I'm going to share a few of those stories with you, and then I want to talk a lot more about other people's stories as they're out doing this. So this is Southeast Alaska. This was one of my first biological or ecological expeditions. We are here studying the die-off of the yellow cedar tree. This is with a researcher named Lauren Oakes from who lives in Bozeman, where I live now. She was at Stanford at the time, and we were trying to understand why these charismatic trees were dying. So super important to indigenous populations. Yellow cedar trees are all along the west, northern part of the west, up into Alaska, and they hit sea level up in Alaska. And her PhD work was all about trying to figure this out. Massive die-offs, up to 80% mortality in a lot of places. So our job was to take these sea kayaks and go site to site, setting these hobo sensors. They're just little temperature loggers. We put them above ground and below ground. And what Lauren and her crew learned is that the elimination of the snowpack in Southeast Alaska is exposing root systems. And those exposure to root systems is making them die much more quickly. So it wasn't cold temperatures, it wasn't a lack of nutrients or anything like that, just the change in snowfall patterns due to climate change. In the Okavonga Delta, this is a saguaro. This is Tom, the music man. I wish this sound would play. We had a little technical glitch here, but I'll just take you through a little bit of our journey here. So we pulled ourselves across the center of the Okavonga Delta in a traditional Mokoro with another great explorer, a guy named Steve Boyes, a really good friend of mine who I admire greatly. Brought us into this place. We had local Ba'ei with us. It was the first time they had made this crossing themselves. And when we could float, we did, and we'd pull ourselves in those using the ingache, which comes from a silver terminalia tree that you saw in some of those previous videos. And when we couldn't, we would follow hippo and elephant channels. You can see I've got a harness on, and we're pulling the Mokoro behind us there. And then when these would dry up, we would have to pull them across dry land, 400 or 500 pounds. Sometimes we'd need 6 or 7 guys on the yokes here, pulling these along. And for the entire journey, Steve had been talking about this place called Out There. And he said, when we get there, that it's going to change our lives. And for days, this had been building. So I think we pulled across dry grass like this for 3 or 4 days. We finally got to this place after just excruciating pain and pulling these things, leeches all over our feet. We started seeing more and more signs as we approached, things like this giant elephant dung getting much closer. We heard elephants in the papyrus, these super tall grasses that were well overhead, could barely see. We didn't actually see the elephants until we got out there. And then all of a sudden, the reeds parted, and 200 lechwe, these waterborne antelope, went from left to right, leaping across the water. 1,000 birds took off all at once. We saw a herd of about 50 elephants crossing. One of them reared up and stomped on a hippo right in front of us. And as we got to the center of this channel, this was the sight. We saw this giant bull hippo that was just not happy to see us whatsoever. And our Ba'ei guys thought it would be a good idea to take their engaches and slap the water. And as you can see, he did not give a shit at all. He goes under the water here. Hippos are much more accustomed to being underwater. They're able to really have control there. You can see these guys quickly running across. And he brought reinforcements. So just a few minutes later, the hippo pops up, and we just started seeing boop, 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 boop. The big bull in the upper right-hand corner there decided to come back. So at this point, we're back in our makoros. We're 1, 2, 3, pull, 1, 2, 3, pull. And we were just in about an inch of water, so dragging along the ground. And this bull hippo comes totally out of the water, about 10 feet away, mouth wide open. I can smell its breath. My heart is going 1 billion miles an hour. And just 1, 2, 3, pull, eyes forward. So we were here documenting biodiversity. We had every bird we counted along the way, and we're doing water quality studies along this area. After 30 years of civil war in Angola, that had finally ended, and now there were new interests in mining happening in Angola, mostly Chinese interests in Angola. And downstream, all the pollutants from there were flowing, so we were really concerned about the largest inland delta in the world, in the Okavango Delta, which is why we're there studying this. At one point, soon after this, Tom the Music Man bumped into my Makoro and sent me into Crocodile Alley. I fell in moments before this. They said that they had never seen anybody levitate out of the water like that. As quickly as I did. So these expeditions were just, again, doing what I love to do, following my passion, being full of adventure, but actually making a difference while I was getting after it. I had the opportunity to do this in Mongolia, the coldest part of the country, surrounded by Siberia on 3 sides. We were skiing here. Looking for the scientific evidence of what had been anecdotally recorded of wolverines in these areas. So if you don't know, gulo, these are the most ferocious creatures. They can fight 600-pound grizzly bears off of kills. They are just some of the most incredible species out there, and they can eke out an existence in some of the coldest and most remote conditions on Earth. So for 27 days we skied. We expected we'd see maybe one track, be able to collect one bit of DNA from this region. And over the course of those 27 days, we found 33 different specimens and documented probably one of the most dense wolverine populations on the planet. We also happened upon a snow leopard track, which extended the known range of snow leopards by about 40 miles to the south. So we were making a real difference. We were having fun doing it and living this life of passion. In the Northern Rockies, I went from the eastern side of Yellowstone to the western side of the Frank Church, also documenting wolverines, put myself in the brain of a grizzly bear, and made decisions as they would make. And I started working with NGOs and other nonprofits to design these protocols so that we could go and do this, so that we could actually make it useful while we were out there. And pretty quickly I saw that, hey, everybody can do this. I don't have a PhD. I have an undergraduate degree in science. My brothers will tell you I'm the least coordinated athlete on the planet. I have a lot of persistence, and I apparently like adventure. But that's about it. And there are so many people who love the outdoors and wish that they could make a difference with their time outside. So I did what anybody in my situation would do, is I Googled, how do you start a nonprofit? And now, 15 years later, we've done a lot of amazing work, and I'll show you a quick video just to introduce the organization to you. Maybe.
Because of adventure scientists, the entire world was now available to study. Adventure Scientists expands where we can go with the research.
Adventure Scientists was recruiting extremely capable people in the wilderness.
Going to places where other people generally don't go.
Giving us the ability to look at organisms in habitats that we had not been able to. pretty much anything's available now.
So in 15 short years, we've had some really big wins, and I'm excited to share these with you tonight. So I'll talk a little bit more about microplastics in a minute, but we've collected the largest data set on Earth for microplastics. We've combated illegal deforestation, led to the Department of Justice prosecuting some of the first timber cases in the U.S. using genetic data. Talk more about that one as well. We've helped restore threatened species to places like the Olympic Peninsula. And we've increased crop yields around the world. I'm going to zoom into the crop yields one here and tell you this story. So pretty early on in our history, two brothers, Argentinian climbers, Willie and Damian Benegas, world-renowned climbers, had told me that they had seen a plant up on Mount Everest and somewhere near Camp 2. If true, that would have broken the known record of the highest known plant life on Earth by about 5,000 feet. So it seemed pretty far-fetched. But I found a researcher at the USGS and the University of Washington by the name of Rusty Rodriguez. He was so excited when I called him and told him about this possibility. We developed a whole protocol and ended up collecting moss up at 21,260 feet. This is from the homepage of the New York Times when we collected the highest known plant life on Earth. In this moss are 5 fungi living symbiotically with the moss, enabling it to grow in this oligotrophic or completely nutrient-poor environment. Now, those 5 fungi, Rusty and his team were able to develop into an inoculant, and today his company, Adaptive Symbiotic Technologies, is utilizing this all around the world and increasing crop yields without the need for synthetic fertilizers. This has been used by more than 10,000 small farmers across India and more than 2 million acres a year, up to 4 million acres a year. And you can see the same field, untreated and treated on the right here. It more than doubles crop yields in the most marginalized soils. And again, it's completely natural symbiosis, no need for NPK fertilizers. An incredible win that we had really early on. Another I want to share is with Harvard Medical School. We sent people out all around the world to collect scat samples, poops, animal poops. You see poops in a lot of my slides. I like poops. And so this was an effort to go and collect as many different taxa as we could. This is an Arctic fox scat being collected by Mike Lebecki's brother up in Greenland. We were able to get all kinds of different things from all around the world. I think we got all 7 continents, about 100 different countries. And what we were doing with this was looking at the Enterococcus genus of bacteria. So my partner at Harvard, Mike Gilmore, Dr. Mike Gilmore and Ashley Earle, talk about this bacterial world in the most compelling way. So if you picture bacteria that are like kelp forests waving in the wind, and those are some of the bacteria, and then through these serums are other ones with flagella that are going through, and they shoot serums at each other and will blow up one of the other bacteria and then actually go and consume that bacteria and take on its traits. It's like zombies eating brains. It's called lateral gene transfer. Many of you probably read David Quammen's book that talks about lateral gene transfer. It's the same concept. And so the idea was if we could understand the genes responsible for antibiotic-resistant infections in Enterococcus, which is one of the oldest and burliest of the bacterial world, that there was very likely you could unlock secrets for how that's happening in other types of infections, Versa, MRSA, other ones. If left unchecked, this will kill 50 million people a year by the year 2050. So it's essential that we understand the genetics and the origins of this so we can create new types of interventions against antibiotic-resistant infections. We recently published on this. It was featured on NPR, a bunch of other places, narrowing the search for these genes down to a small enough number that we can begin to test those interventions. So super excited about this outcome as well. I'm going to share 2 more with you and then kind of breeze through some others. Microplastics, I mentioned we collected the largest data set on Earth for microplastics. This started when Lonnie Dupree, another member of the club, went to the Langju Glacier, a place that had never before been visited by outsiders, by people. He was the first to ascend on this glacier, and in the lake at the bottom of this, sure enough, we found microplastics. This showed that indeed they're airborne. We weren't the only ones. There was a lot of other research happening at the same time. that it was also corroborating this, but this was probably 2013, 2014 when we first found this, and we ended up creating a project that sent freshwater boaters out. We sent people out across oceans, sailing teams through up to Greenland, and even the first the first people to row across the Arctic Ocean. We partnered with the first rowing race across the Pacific. We partnered with a group called the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers to create an incredible data set. I'll zoom into the coast of West Africa here and just give you a sense of the resolution that we've got. So each of these is a team of people that were out there that ended up collecting these samples. They were shipped to a lab in Maine, and they were analyzed under microscope and what's called FTIR spectroscopy in order to confirm that it was indeed plastic. And we showed that these are not just in the gyres. This is all across the world. Plastics are really infiltrating just about every water ecosystem on the planet. Major issue. With this data set, we were included in a report to the government of Palau, helped establish one of the first MPAs there, along with the Pristine Seas Group. We worked with a number of different companies, not just the ones listed here, helped change their packaging, their sustainability practices, helped get them to invest further in researching and understanding this issue. More than 300 institutions today, everyone from the EPA to the WHO, even middle school students who use these data to create their own research projects, have utilized these data sets for everything from maximum contamination limits to PhD theses to a number of different things that came out of this. And one more I'll share with you is our illegal timber project. So you may know that across the world, $150 billion of timber are illegally stolen out of forests every single year. $150 billion. In the U.S., it's $1 billion. A catastrophic amount is stolen out of these forests. Around the world, 1 in 3 wood products you buy are illegally sourced. 1 out of every 3. It's an incredibly huge issue. And what we did is send people out to collect specimens, and I'm going to let a video talk about this one for me as well.
I'm an adventure scientist, which means I'm a volunteer. We help collect data. At this moment, we're collecting samples for the timber tracking project that will hopefully lead to help convict poachers of, illegal timber logging.
I grew up in Brazil, and my dad, he was an ecological person. So he gave me this awareness to take care of nature. So to me, it was my niche. I love it. Right here. Close these. Now I have my tool. I'm going to find a place kind of here in between.
The adventure scientists are taking on this incredible role of trying to collect high-value reference samples for scientists like me.
They train us volunteers to collect samples, and we're collecting the core of the tree. And the core, they're going to do a chemical composition to later on be able to match it, see if it's possible to match it to the leaves. Hopefully it will lead to help stop poaching.
I'm going to insert this here. Take the core. And then we have the core.
Okay, this goes in our desiccant bag.
And now just unpackaging the wood core, sitting in a bed of desiccant. We remove the core from the straw. I cut a small portion of just the end. It's that small disc. From there, we make fine slivers out of the section in order to maximize what the sample can do. We use direct analysis in real time, time of flight, mass spec to look at the chemotypes of trees. And just like a fingerprint can identify individual humans, a chemotype can identify individual species.
If the information is validated and stands in consensus, it will be integrated with our forest database. The database allows us to provide information to law enforcement where they can determine if something has been done illegally, whether that's import, wood shipment, or wood product under false declaration or without complete certification. And so our goal is really to develop a database that can be used hopefully one day by anybody in the world in order to do this sort of identification to help them fight illegal logging.
So in the last few years, 2 cases have been fought and won by the Department of Justice in the U.S. One of those poachers got 22 months. What we're really trying to do, though, is flip this. We don't like to see anybody in prison, so we're trying to make it so that we can confirm legality of the woods that are most commonly used in building materials, things like Doug fir and lodgepole pine. So we're developing those projects now. The data set here is pretty massive, again, so each one of these is an expedition team that went out, collected samples, just like the ones you saw there, shipped them off to the labs, both at the Forest Service and at the Fish and Wildlife Service. And with these, we can now take any one of these 9 species that we did this for and narrow down the origins of any piece of wood from that species to within 20 kilometers of origin. It's a massive tool that has never existed before for law enforcement and for the legal timber community. So we've done hundreds of projects at Adventure Scientists. There's a few more of them. You can go on our website and see as many of these as you want. Just to tell you a little bit more about how this all works. So you hear about it at an event like this. You might read about us somewhere. And then you come and the first thing you're going to do is do an online training. So I'll click up on this, the course there, just to give you a sense of what it looks like. We make these really amazing trainings in-house. I think this will play. There we go. And you can see that we incorporate a lot of different types of learning styles into these visual styles. Textual learners do really well here. We always try to just keep people engaged as we're doing this, making sure to inject a lot of humor into these things like this video, which just keep people coming back, keep people wanting to work through their lessons with us. So everything we do on apps, pretty much, we use a lot of Esri products. We can customize these, and we've learned over time how to ask the right questions to reinforce protocols. We often have to use body cams when data need to hold up in court. We need to be able to show how they were collected, that nothing was falsified. And then once you complete your course and you've gone through all of this, the barcode there is because we have chain of custody on every sample we collect. So as soon as it's collected, we know it. As soon as it leaves the forest, we know it. It gets to the lab as soon as it's analyzed, and then we can go back and tell the volunteer what it is that they found and how it related to the broader data set as well. You're going to get a kit in the mail like this. This is one for a California biodiversity study we're doing right now. This is the insect kit. So we're responsible for surveying 5,000 sites across the state of California as part of their 30 by 30 initiative. And so you get a bug sucker, so you literally suck the bugs out into these vials and then put them into the vials where there's some preservative that you get. It's really fun, and you don't actually have to put any bugs in your mouth along the way. With this model, we've been able to do this all around the world. I mentioned 21,260. You got to see that. We were 567 feet below the surface of the ocean with our deepest microplastic sample, all continents, probably more than 47 countries by now. And that's been thanks to about 10,000 amazing volunteers who we've had. One of them is here tonight. I didn't know this, but he came up to me just before. And John, if you don't mind just saying a few words about your experience when you were out there.
Yeah, of course. I've always been very... Thank you so much. Yeah, so having Adventure Scientists was such a great opportunity for me who wants to get involved in these volunteer projects and really doesn't know where to start. The project I did was in Grand Staircase Escalante, studying human impact on a lot of the wilderness out there. And I never would have found this if it wasn't for a website that I could put my skill set into and get matched with that project. It was a wonderful opportunity. I had never really considered going out and desert backpacking before, and being able to work with the team and learn how to do this research was hugely helpful, and makes me want to go out and do more.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So John was doing a wilderness characterization out in Escalante, and now we're working to expand that to all wilderness areas, which allows us to determine all human impacts or human influence in wilderness areas, which are supposed to be the most pristine, at least in our country. In the last few years of these 10,000 volunteers, one of the coolest things that's come out of this is we've learned that about 27% of them self-report that they are now going on to take long-term conservation actions, which means they've gone back to school to study conservation. They've gone to run for political office with an environmental platform. They have switched career paths and are now working in conservation. They are starting their own NGOs. So the ripple effects of this are immeasurable and just absolutely massive. It's not something we expected, but it's one of the coolest things that we've learned in the last few years, something I'm really proud of. We've got a lot of projects going on now, or that are going to be going on here in New York. I hope you'll get involved in the Hemlock Project. So this is a little different than the illegal timber project, because we've now documented all the species in the U.S. that need to be for illegal timber. But what we're doing now is looking at tree disease. So the woolly adelgid is a species that is devastating the hemlock forests. And so you can go out, and what we're looking for is the resilient trees, the ones that are not being devastated, so that we can replicate their genetics, breed them, and then reforest using those data. We're detecting methane leaks in Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania alone, there's an estimated 560,000 orphaned and idled wells. These are oil and gas wells that were drilled before 1956, before there were laws that you had to reclaim these, and they're all leaking various amounts of methane. Through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, or act, there was about $400 million set aside for the state of Pennsylvania to reclaim 6,000 to 7,000 wells out of 560,000. So we're going out first to find them, and then once we find them, we take these little handheld methane sensors and get people to document the amount of methane emerging from these wells, so that when they reclaim the 7,000, it's actually the ones that need to be reclaimed instead of just the easiest ones to get to, hoping to reduce the impact of methane leaks in that area. In the Amazon, we're working to build a 10-year project to study mercury contamination. This one we won't run. It'll be handed off to our partners, to the local governments and local people who will have this ongoing citizen science initiative. I mentioned the California Bio one. We're working in Latin America to study coral reefs and their resilience to climate change. And then spotted owls in the Pacific Northwest is a project that we're going to be doing with acoustic recording units. So a lot of our projects use new technologies. These will be left in the forest for a month. We'll come back, and then algorithms will be able to separate out every species that we see or that were heard in those areas. And we're working towards, with the Forest Service partner there, the goal is to get 4,000 of these units out. So I don't know how many we'll do and they'll do, but we're figuring all that out. But this is what's coming ahead for us.
Where's the mercury coming from in the Amazon?
Mercury is primarily gold mining. Artisanal gold mining is the primary source of this. So they use it to separate out gold from the rest of the ore. And it's absolutely horrendous. I mean, you've all heard of, with fish, it's a big issue here and elsewhere, but because their livelihoods are so tied to these rivers, then when mercury spikes in these rivers, which it is across the entire basin, leads to birth defects, leads to all kinds of different diseases and challenges for them. It's a really big issue. One of the things about this model that I want to just stress, and this is not just adventure scientists, but all citizen science, is the leverage that this provides. So these are volunteers going out, people dedicating their time. For us, this is about $4 to $6 for every $1 we spend of work that we can get done. And that's really exciting for us. That's a really strong leverage point. But it doesn't stop there. What we're looking for are projects where the dollars get really big. Things like $1 billion issue in the U.S. with the timber project that we're able to spend. We've probably spent $2.5 to $3 million on this project over the last few years, and we're able to influence this $1 billion industry. With the oil and gas, it's $400 million that are going to be used to reclaim these wells. So over and over again, we're able to take a really small amount of money and just leverage it so that we can have as much impact as possible and engage this army of people along the way. Citizen science is a massive and growing field. It's not just us that are doing great work. Here's some other organizations I really admire. If you don't want to get involved with us, you don't have to be a world-class climber. You don't have to be super adventurous. You just have to love going out into the outdoors. These are some other places where you can get involved. SciStarter has probably 3,000 projects on it that you can go and do. NASA is doing really good work here. iNaturalist is a place where you can not only go and just take a picture of stuff with your phone and put it into a huge database of biodiversity, but you actually get to learn about what you're seeing using AI, and it can identify nearly any species. It's just super, super cool. So we constantly bitch about preaching to the choir. In circles like this, in rooms like this, we always talk about preaching to the choir. We live in a time when government isn't going to solve these problems for us. And so it is so essential that we rise up with civic engagement, that we get people from the private sector engaged to be part of these solutions. So I'm tired of saying that we preach to the choir and we just keep talking to ourselves. The choir is not doing enough. Imagine what's possible if we can galvanize people and move them in a common direction. Imagine what it looks like when tens of thousands of people can go and collect data, can go and volunteer, can go be part of the solution. And now more than ever, this is absolutely what's needed. So every one of you, please get involved with us, with any other organization doing great work. Come and join us. We need you. We need money. We need support. We need business acumen. We need guidance. And we need you. So please come and join us. Thanks. So we've got some time for questions, if you have any for me, or, yeah.
Sorry, please wait for the mic. How are you different from Earthwatch and some British group, Bio something?
Yeah, so Earthwatch is a really amazing organization where people pay to go on trips and work with a researcher for usually around a week to 2 weeks in the field with them and help them gather data, build some support for their research. It's a great organization. None of our volunteers are paying. We are contracted by the scientists and then supported by philanthropy beyond that. So about 30% of our revenue comes from the scientific partners, government contracts. We're pretty worried about those contracts now, but are working to build that other places as well in the private sector as well. So that's the biggest difference in our model. So these are people who are already going out. They're on their own expeditions. They're not guided. They're not with the scientists in the field. We're training them how to be extra arms and legs for the scientist and go out.
How long are the trips typically, or how far out are the adventurers going?
Yeah. Great questions.
In your group.
So we have across the entire spectrum. So we've had people that have gone out for literally half a day, and then we have people who have been out sailing around the world and collect samples for us every single day that they're out there for years. Your trip in Escalante was what, a week?
Yeah, my trip was a full week, minus the training and getting out there and getting settled. It was basically 4 days out in the wilderness doing the study.
Thank you. This was so interesting. I can't believe I haven't heard of you until tonight. My question is, once you're out there, right, if you're not working with the scientists, who's kind of running the whole thing? And it's not like where you were in the beginning, where you were in volcanic ash and everything. There's got to be like some kind of regime, right?
Yeah, so our training is something we have a lot of pride in, and then reinforcement throughout the process. So once you sign up, you go through a full online training. You're going to meet the scientists during that process. First in videos, we often have calls with them and things like Zoom webinars and things like that for all the volunteers to meet them. Then we have dedicated staff that are responsible for customer service for the volunteers, essentially. So volunteers are constantly writing in questions. They're asking, hey, I don't know what to do when my cap breaks in the middle of the wilderness. And they're answering all those questions for them. And then in the apps themselves, it reinforces. So things like, did you remember to rinse your cap underwater? Did you remember to cap your bottle underwater? Things like that that just reinforce the protocols throughout. So we make it super, super easy so that you can be successful while you're out there. Okay.
Right over here. Hi, I'm Daryl and my wife Andrea is with me, and it's not really a question, but we are actually volunteers with Adventure Sciences out of Las Vegas.
Amazing.
Yeah. We've
which projects have you guys done?
A couple of years ago, we did the Wild and Scenic Rivers project out in Death Valley.
So tell people about it.
Oh, well, it was it was actually very interesting because you think about Death Valley and you don't think there's any water out there, but there's actually the Armagosa River, and we were able to go on your website. We did exactly what you've been talking about, where we did the training. You sent us the kit. We went out there the first time and got lost, couldn't find a river. The Google Maps was not very good to us, but then we were able to find the actual river, and it was running very rapidly, and we were able to collect the data. We sent it back to you when, I guess maybe about a month or so after that, your team contacted us and said, would you be willing to go out again and collect additional data for us? So we went and did that as well, and we realized just within a month that that river was almost completely dried up, but we had just enough to get stuff. So that was a lot of fun. We did 2 years of your reforestation project program in California. The first time we went out there, it was, again, just like you're saying, he's not blowing smoke at guys. This is really, we like to go out and we camp and we do stuff, and this is an additional opportunity for us to do good for the environment and for the planet while we're having fun out there. We went to a campground near Bishop, California, doing the reforestation program, and I have a hybrid Ford Escape, and learned that it doesn't like climbing mountains sometimes when you're pulling a teardrop trailer. So what was supposed to be a 3-day camp trip to do adventure sciences stuff ended up being a week and a half and many thousands of dollars of repairs. But it was an adventure, and we still love doing it for you. So
amazing. Thank you. Perseverance.
Yes, yes.
This is why this works, is because explorers are naturally people who can figure it out, right? So, yeah, things go wrong, to your point, all the time in the field, and we're training people how to use their adventure skills, how to use their outdoor skills so that they can adapt and do what a field biologist would do while they're out there.
Right here.
Awesome talk, thank you. This all sounds incredibly complex logistically, and I'm just curious how the back office works and how you manage it all.
Yeah, great question. It is so complex logistically, and our team's amazing. We are originally we were based in Bozeman. Now, after COVID, everybody's kind of gone remote, which makes it another layer of complexity that is very challenging, that we're still learning how to work through. There's about 15 staff full-time. There's a number of contractors that take us closer to 20. And people that are responsible for each of the different aspects of this. So Ricky has been with us for 7 years, is our tech guy, and he's doing all the apps and all that stuff. John's working on the GIS side of it. We've got permitting group. We've got people who are responsible for volunteer recruiting. Elisa runs that. So each different aspect of it is broken out, and somebody's got the lead on that. That being said, things go wrong all the time, and we're constantly looking to tweak and be more efficient. Efficiency is really important to me. It's something that I care deeply about, and We're constantly learning how to get better, incorporate things like AI so that we can reduce the need for staff time to answer questions. We're looking for how technology can really make us more efficient, reduce the number of staff per volunteer that we need. So we're going to get better at that this year.
Hey, out of curiosity, would you mind talking a little bit more about how you got involved with the Okavango project and how you heard about that originally?
Yeah, Steve and I actually share a birthday randomly. That's not why, though. We met at National Geographic, so we were both 2013 emerging explorers and got that award together and just fell in love with each other and started scheming this up. The plan was to have it be that adventure scientists would eventually take over some of that data collection, and for a number of reasons, that didn't work out. They're now doing something much bigger than just Okavango, and really encourage you to check out the Wilderness Project run by Steve Boyes. So incredible, the work that he's doing. But yeah, I just love Africa. I've been there a bunch of times, and Steve believed in me enough to let me pull my own Mokoro. And the very first day we get there, and there's this huge lagoon that we had to cross, and so we sat in the Mokoro and just kind of canoed across. But then we get to the other side where there's the first flowing river. I've never been in this thing before. It's 16 feet long. It's about 1.5 feet wide, super wobbly, and I've got 450 pounds of gear in it. I've got this 20-year-old in the front who's never been out on an expedition before, but he knew how to use a Mokoro, but he was so shy, he wouldn't tell me what to do. And so I stand up and I'm like, I had been practicing in a whitewater canoe in a lake in Bozeman, and I kept the, if you know what a whitewater canoe looks like, there's like ropes that go across to tension it. And I kept those on, so every time I would mess up, I would kind of like get cut by these ropes. And I learned pretty quickly how to balance in that way. And then, so my balance was good. I was very shaky though, and I'm using this engashe, and I'm going the complete wrong direction because you push off, and so it's not intuitive. It's not like a canoe where you row on this side and you go that way. Instead, you're pushing off to pivot the back of the boat because there's a flow to the river. And so it didn't click for me until eventually somebody waited. I can't remember if it was Steve or his little brother Chris or what, but they were waiting and they were like, you've got about 10 more minutes to figure this out, and then we can't wait. Like, it's not safe. There are crocs all around here. Not cool. And I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong? He tells me. It took me about 10 minutes, and I was able to at least function enough to keep going. And yeah, we made it across the entire interior of the Delta and ended up out there. And then beyond that, we got to Sambora is this place we ended up that it was a life-changing trip. That is the most special place I think I've ever been, where you look out over a landscape and there are not just 3 or 4 or 5 species, but dozens of species all at once, birds and mammals, everything you can imagine, monitors running around. It is one of the most special places I've ever been. Thank you. Yeah. You got to use the mic for the people online.
So loud. Okay. Hi. Do you have any experience of working with volunteers who are blind?
It's a great question. We definitely try to incorporate as many different accessibility standards as we can. I don't know is that answer. I feel like I would know if we had,
okay.
But I don't actually know.
I'll reach out, and if there is, I would like to connect.
Okay.
Thanks.
Awesome. And if not, then blind people, please come join us.
Okay. What's up?
What comes first? I'm going off adventuring, and how can I help? Or do you have something organized and looking for volunteers for an adventure?
Yeah, it's a great question. It actually flipped. So it used to be adventure-led. It used to be, I'm going here, what can I do? And then we would find a scientist who needed that data. And then we flipped it because one-off expeditions are really hard to have impact on. And when we flipped it and said to the scientists, what data do you need? What's going to move the needle for you? That really opened up a world of impact for us, and that's what our central focus is. Now, that being said, we've invested recently in something that we call our platform, where scientists, both and adventurers, can post where they live and where they need data from, and adventurers where they're going, and it's like a matchmaking thing. So we're still working on that. It's a marketplace. It's up and running now. It's called platform.adventurescientist.org, and you can go and see it and place where you live or where you're going. And, you know, I can't say we have a high enough match rate yet, but we're working on it, and we're going to get that better and better.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for coming. This was amazing and interesting talk. And it's inspiring for me, too. So I do a similar thing like Greg in Mongolia, science education, trying to involve a lot of communities to our project, mostly for dinosaurs and fossils in Mongolia. So, well, thank you so much. So this is very interesting. And please give another clap for Greg. And so this is...
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. So.
Thanks for having me. It's a huge honor to speak here. Appreciate it.
I've been in chair, though.
We have another lecture next Monday. Hope you can make it. Also, everyone is a welcome guest of the bar downstairs in the members' lounge tonight until 10 p.m. if you're interested.
Thank you.